the ACC filed a brief Tuesday in North Carolina in opposition to Florida State's motion to dismiss or stay its case, the latest legal filing before a scheduled hearing March 22nd, where both parties will make their cases in front of a judge. In Tuesday's brief, the ACC outlined why the case should play out in North Carolina, of course, reiterating it is the appropriate venue for dispute over a North Carolina contract to be decided. So make sense of that and then fill in the blanks for us.
The ESPN being a part of this had to, come in and do what they needed to do as far as responding. And typically what happens is these guys, they wait to the last minute to be able to stretch these things out. That's typically how a lot of civil stuff goes down unless the court requires you to expedite the process. So ESPN coming in, showing up at the last minute, filing their 2 cents about why they believe Florida State is in the wrong, why they should be forced to stay. A lot of these different things is just, again, them doing what they're supposed to do on behalf of their client. Now, when it comes to, again, with the ACC and all these other different things, they're basically stating that the record should be sealed and that Florida State should not be able to divulge any of this information to anybody else. And that just shows that they did not really have a great understanding of who they were getting in business with in the first place. Or they just figured that if we do what we're supposed to do, we'll never get in a position where Florida State might be able to put us in a disadvantage. They're using words like trade secrets, which Coca-Cola has a trade secret. It's locked in a vault in Atlanta, in the Coca-Cola Museum. And you can see it from the outside, but the only people who get to go in there is like only 1 or 2 people that can go in there and know the recipe to Coca-Cola. That's a trade secret because Coca-Cola has an original recipe that they don't want Pepsi to know. The problem with what ESPN is trying to make it seem like is that they have this secret sauce or secret formula to how they negotiate contracts, which should not be seen by anybody else, which is crazy. It's like if I sign a contract with you, Mark, and I say that, you know what, Mark, I don't need you to have an attorney look over that contract because of trade secrets. Like that nobody's ever done that before. That makes absolutely no sense. It's absurd. Specifically when a contract should, if they were as simple as possible, state, how do I get paid? What do I need to do in order to get paid? And how do I not get paid? And if things were that simple, nobody would be worried about it. But they're acting like they invented the words that go into contract law, and like this would make them be at a disadvantage with NBC, CBS, or Fox, or anybody else who's competing to go up against these different things. But again, by the nature of that and a bunch of other different things that I think George was talking about while we were off air, which just make more sense. Who signed the contract? Who's not supposed to sign the contract? There's rules. And to quote one of my favorite people, Winston and John Wick, rules are what make us different than the animals. Like without them, we'd be savages. So we have rules, we have bylaws. That's what governments do. And what ESPN is trying to pretend like they're not in business with the state of Florida government, which is what Florida State University is. We are a government institution. Now, the scary part, which they should have thought about when you made a shady business deal, is the fact that in the state of Florida, we have this thing again called Sunshine State laws. Now, if they were suing us or coming with a retort in the state of Florida courts, that would make more sense. But in North Carolina, where Florida law doesn't necessarily take precedent in the state of North Carolina, unless you're a state of Florida business, which we are, you can't go and say trade practices are here. Now, what they're going to have to do, even if they do it in the state of Florida, is they're going to have to discuss what are trade practices. What are your trade secrets? What is so scary that you can't have anybody know this, and it's going to mess up your business, which is going to happen in discovery if the judge doesn't throw it out and say Florida State needs to do this, which no judge is throwing this out. So at the end of the day, it's all posturing. It's all for show.
The only thing that ESPN's worried about is ESPN. They're not worried about the ACC. They're not worried about Florida State. They're worried about how ESPN continues to do what they're doing, and that's therefore trying to control this sport, and therefore trying to control college sports. They know if they can get this sealed, that it kind of stops the information from coming out that anyone would want to know. then you can start just using the analogy that that's a trade secret, or this is a secret, or that is a secret. So this needs to be sealed, that needs to be sealed. So that's before it comes out to the public eye. And when you get that justified in the beginning over the small things, which the thing that Florida State came out with that they didn't like was talking about the Swaffords and Swafford's son and Skipper when he was the president of ESPN. Those are the small things that if they get those sealed, then they can get things sealed before they hit the public eye. The issue is like James said, there's no judge that's they can't seal it because of the Florida or the sunshine laws here in the state of Florida. So they're doing their due diligence. They're doing what they feel is going to win the public's eye, or try to at least persuade the public's eye. But when you've got people that, in my eyes, that are as ignorant that talk about sports as Paul Feinbaum, telling you that Florida State's got a case and Florida State's making the ACC look like garbage, Florida State's kind of hurting ESPN, said on his own show. When all of the big media people start saying what we've been saying for months about the case, but now you've got big media saying, oh, we think Florida State's last year in the ACC conference is 2024. We think that they leave as quick as 2025. They're only saying that because now they're finally hearing what we've already heard. And I don't really care, other than the fact that Florida State and their whole plan, whatever their strategy was going into this lawsuit, I guess it's unbeatable in a way, because also all that's happened so far is the ACC and now ESPN, when they use the words like, have they, has Florida State committed felonies? You're just making two really big entities look like asshats. That lets you know that you're winning. Usually when, kids get upset and you win against them in Monopoly Go, and they can't flip the board over no more because there isn't one. And if they tear the phone up, you're going to tear their rear end up. So, in the long story of all this of being short, ESPN's doing their due diligence to make ACC believe that they're on their side. Truth of the matter is, all ESPN wants to do, which is a hypothetical conversation that could have happened over coffee, was therefore said, hey, Florida State, we could possibly get you out of the ACC conference, but we want you to come to the SEC because they don't want to lose the revenue from what Florida State brings to the table. And that conversation must not have went so great, because then soon thereafter, they make a whole statement about, Florida State needs to stop talking about our trade secrets. Did they commit felonies? Blah, blah, blah. So it's just a bunch of hearsay. I'm not worried about what ESPN's got to say in the next one. They're using things to try to get it dropped in Florida, and they turn around and use the same opposites to try to get it to stand in North Carolina. They can try all they want. They signed the contract. They signed the grant of rights as well. Everybody says it's ironclad, blah, blah, blah. Well, they signed the contract that stated that if you were going to sue us, you had to do it within inside of the state of Florida. They sued us. They did it outside of the state of Florida. So who committed the felony? We'll find out soon enough.
I don't think a lot of people realize, yes, Florida State is in an unbeatable situation, just because, say the ACC gets their way, they totally win. Florida State is either loses or forced to cower and take a bad settlement. It just means that Florida State's going to have to pay $500+ million to get out. That's just the absolute worst case scenario. I don't think that's going to happen, but yeah, it's an untenable situation. This stuff is for show. We've all stated our opinions. We don't think it's ever going to get discovery. So all this stuff is just about playing the media, playing the narratives out there so they can, whichever side can win that settlement. And is one of the main points I wanted to bring up. As far as this specific filing, it was Florida State's motion to dismiss in North Carolina is what the ACC was trying to get dropped to defeat. Basically what these guys said is, okay, well, in the bylaws, it says that, it has to be the board of trustees. A president or a single administrator can't go and sign off on some giant grant of rights deal, et cetera, et cetera. But within the grant of rights, it gives him that power to make that call. So basically, unilaterally, the president of the university is able to sign a new, executive order without, it being approved by the board of trustees. So it's a whole can of worms with that. That's one particular part of it. Another part of it, ESPN, ACC, etc. They're kind of challenging the Sunshine State laws, like James was alluding to. But this is North Carolina. They're basically just saying that's why we need to have this thing in North Carolina, because these Sunshine State laws say this and that. But as far as the side in Florida, which isn't the exact part we're talking about now, you're not going to defeat those Sunshine State laws. It's been going on for too long. There's way too much precedence there. But it's just really funny because the ACC, they basically literally, it's the exact reciprocate of their arguments to dismiss the case in Florida is what they use in North Carolina. So if you're to believe the ACC and ESPN are being forthright, then you should throw both cases out, because they have no right to get one dismissed and they have no right to take the other one to trial. Just going literally on their words. It's just a big gaslighting. Everything is he said, she said, and using jargon to try to twist things. But I think it's pretty clear to everybody kind of exactly what's transpired here, and Florida State will be out soon.
I'm still hung up on this trade secrets plea, because I am far from an expert when it comes to trade secrets. I'm far from an expert when it comes to legalities. However, trade secrets are generally, James' example was Coca-Cola, for things that involve technology, that involve inventions, science, things that have a specific and very technical order to them that were invented or devised in some way. Trade secrets. Now, when I was at ESPN, there were certain things that we were sworn to secrecy involving trade secrets that were either creative properties or operational strategies and so forth. But in terms of trade secrets that involve negotiations for a TV contract, I just don't, I can't fathom what that would be. What would be a trade secret within a, and again, I might be missing something here, but I just think that's a big stretch, most likely.
I can read the definition real quick, the kind of bullet points. It's something that's not generally known to the public, confers economic benefit on its holder because the information is not publicly known, and where the holder makes reasonable efforts to maintain its secrecy. While you can kind of apply some things there, I don't have the precedents off the top of my head, but it's just been defeated over and over and over throughout the years that contract language and laws is just simply, it's not a trade secret. This thing gives no benefit to the ACC and ESPN because it's not known, other than just the fact that it's like trying to trick people. Like you said, there is no secret ingredient. There is no way that they make the sausage. It's just they don't want people to know how bad they lied, because the fact that they lied and put forth these things and made these deals behind closed doors. I'm curious to have each other's opinion on it, but I don't think it even comes close to applies outside of just jargon and trying to confuse semantics with definitions, because it's not a trade secret to me.
You removed the word trade, and they want their secret sealed.
Mm-hmm. Facts.
And they're using the terminology of trade secrets based off of, like James said, it's their trade secrets about how they negotiate contracts, and the contracts that have been put forth. The reason that they're getting so entitled to that trade secret of negotiation is because of, like I've said this before, there's 4 in particular schools in the ACC conference that somehow don't have an endowment as large as Florida State's or some others, that don't contribute to the conference near as much as Florida State, Clemson, Miami, and some others. And what they're wanting to keep secret is, how did these 4 particular schools end up with standalone football facilities, renovations, X, Y, and Z without it being on the book? Where'd the money come from? Who spent the money? Was it from donors? Did you get extra money from the ACC conference that you wasn't supposed to get because you voted a certain way? What emails were sent between you and the ACC conference where you'd be allowed to build a standalone facility without it being on the books or public knowledge? The things are there, and that's what they're wanting to keep secretive. That's why I said on my episode, when the bomb drops, which the same way that we did when we were talking to Japan back in the day, we told them, hey, we're going to drop this bomb. And it's going to do X, Y, and Z to everybody. Here's your warning. You can basically give up or we're going to drop it. Well, whomever, and it goes to Hiroshima or whatever, how you say it. We dropped 2 in totality, but we warned on the first one. We still had to drop it. I don't think that's the case with this because this is an atomic bomb of information. And I think that exactly what it is they were going for their last stretch to try to stop the possibilities of whatever and whomever traded money to whomever for them to get standalone facilities and so on. And yes, all of this is hypothetical because I can't sit there and say who's told me that. But the long story of it, the short, is there's some really shady stuff that's been done in the past tense of when the grant of rights was re-signed in 2016. There's a lot of different things that took place that people aren't talking about and haven't talked about. It's also the reason why the ACC doesn't want to release the grant of rights to the public and make it public knowledge because there's some things in it that was never finished. It's not an executed full copy in my eyes until proven otherwise. So it's to me, it's very simple. If you can get little things like this analogy of trade secrets of how you do X, Y, and Z, then you can get everything sealed. Anything and everything that you want sealed, you can do it because you can therefore apply the definition of what George just read off to almost anything. You can apply that to almost anything that you talk about. So we'll see what happens, but Florida State's getting ready to drop a bomb, whether people want to believe it or not. People are saying that I'm a huge conspiracy theorist. Call me what you want. Told me the same thing when I told you 2 years ago that Florida State was going to the Big Ten. I was told it was a dream. It was us wishing and wishing upon a star. I got all the receipts for it. So when it happens is when those things will get released. But the fact of the matter is you called me that 2 years ago, and now everybody's agreeing that Florida State's last season to play in the ACC is 2024. I'm sorry that James, myself, and there was a few others 2 years ago that told you that was the case. Nobody wanted to believe it then. We were just a bunch two kooks talking about sports and wanted clicks. Now, how kooky do we look? How bad do we really need clicks? I don't know if y'all pay attention to everybody else's views, but we ain't doing too bad our damn self.
And I'm making no accusations here, but just stating 2 facts. You guys correct me if I'm wrong. So, Chad Swafford, the ACC commissioner at the time's son, was working at Boston College. And also we've got John Wildhack, who was the head of programming at ESPN and took over as athletic director at Syracuse. So those connections are a bit speculative
Mark.
as well.
Mark, you're doing too much digging.
Yeah, it's their nepotism and their kind of backstage stuff is just so out in the open and obvious that it's just like that's why it's like there's just no way we're getting to that discovery. There's just so many skeletons buried, and for Wake Forest and North Carolina and these schools, and we won't get into the 4 schools that it's possible up to what Chris is alluding to, hypothetically being possible, but all of a sudden, all these people, especially like North Carolina and Wake Forest, a year later, all of a sudden they flip. They're on Florida State's side after all these years of voting the other way and all these things. It's like, where there's smoke, there's fire, my friend. Just can't wait till that bomb gets dropped finally that Chris alluded to. It's going to be a lot of fun.
Real quick.
Nothing wrong with nepotism unless it's incompetence involved. Nothing's wrong with nepotism unless incompetence is involved. And this is just, unfortunately, and if I were ESPN, that's the real reason I wouldn't want it to be seen, because it shows that we had that they had a big role to play in some major incompetence.